Lights, camera, action. Okay. Welcome,
Hello, Mr. Hertzfeld.
Mr. Keanu Reeves.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao.
What's happening?
Well, you know, we're gonna explore today with a little exploration. I know bits and pieces along the way, but I always like to dive in and capture the early moments of life.
Okay.
Going back to your actual birth in Beirut, Lebanon.
Well, we're doing biography.
We're doing a little biography, but we're gonna jump around, man. We're gonna jump
All
around.
right, let's go.
But we're starting. So take me back to Beirut, September 1964. You're born, and
Right,
and
Beirut, Lebanon,
Yeah,
the
let's do it.
Paris of the Middle East. Let's see, my mother and father were like 21, 22. My father was there. He had gotten, I actually don't really know his stories. I think it's like he was in college and then left and then was in Beirut on the beach. My mother, English, ran away from home. Paris, working, showgirl, but then also picking up pins in couture houses, getting into fashion, where she would end up becoming a fashion designer, clothing designer for musicians, Anne Murray, Dolly Parton. But anyway, so they met, they fell in love, then I had a baby. That was me. And then they stayed there for a few months, and then they ended up going to Australia. And there's a bunch of stuff in there, but that's the big picture. And then we went to, then they split up. We went to New York, and then I ended up in Toronto,
So it was
Canada.
Beirut, Sydney, New York, Toronto, and Sydney was only like what, 6 years or 4 years? Or?
Oh, not even.
Not
I
even.
think, yeah, I don't. My sister was born there. Yeah, so that might have been months or something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then you came to New York, and your mom was involved with some type of, was it a producer, or there was a guy who was in the theater there or not?
Right. So then she met someone, and this gentleman named Paul Aaron.
Paul Aaron,
And they
yeah.
got married. I think they were married for like 6 months or something like that. And yeah, Paul was directing Broadway, ended up working in Hollywood.
And you kept some contact with Paul during and then
Yeah,
after?
so yeah.
Your
So
life
he was
had some
around for a
thread?
few years, and then and yeah, stayed in contact, and you know, it was kind of really part of one of the other introductions into show business. You know, I was a PA on one of his movie of the weeks when I was like 15. I wanted to become an actor from when I was probably around 15. I was like, I think I asked my mother, is it okay if I'm an actor? And she was like, whatever you want, darling. So thanks for that, Ma. And then, yeah, so eventually then I started working, and then through Paul Aaron, got a green card, and then at 20, got in my car and drove to Hollywood.
Right. And then from there, it was a series of projects, starting with, which one was the first one out? Was that in when you got to Hollywood?
Yeah, I think the first job, I mean, I was here for a while.
Wasn't Youngblood, was it, in 86?
Yeah, so Youngblood was the first 35 millimeter picture, and that was in Toronto, Canada. I was doing a play with a fine actor, a gentleman named Carl Marat, and he was having an audition for this American film. American movies were coming into Canada for, even then, tax credit. I played hockey. It was a hockey-related film.
You played hockey at LaSalle College in Toronto, right?
Not college. It was De La Salle is high school.
High school, okay.
Yeah, I went there for 1 year.
You were a goalie, apparently.
I played net I was the senior goaltender. Yeah.
And your nickname was The Wall, is that correct?
Yeah, sometimes it was the broken wall, but I had a pretty good run there for a little bit. Yeah. So after Youngblood, so the first job I got in Los Angeles was a project called I don't know what it ended up being called.
Wasn't River's Edge, was it?
No,
it was before
a
that.
television film. I got to work with Andy Griffith. I was playing his alcoholic son.
But it wasn't Wolf Boy in Toronto, because that was before.
Yeah, Wolf Boy was the play I was doing.
Yeah, right.
And and so it was exciting times because I got to Los Angeles and
It's the mid '80s now, right? Oh, we got a mic issue there. Let's see if we can.
It's broken.
It's broken. Oh, here we go. We have a.
How about that? That worked.
I think
we're good.
There we go. Feeling good. Yeah. So.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So then so you ended up working on a.
It was cool. It was it was great. I mean, working with Andy Griffith was amazing. Season Hubley was, and it was my first gig. I made my first friend on the show, and I had great scenes. Got to be the alcoholic son, go to the cemetery, winter, all the cotton balls making the snow with the gun and the flask and.
Very cool. Yeah.
And getting to, pretend.
Yeah.
That it's in play.
Yeah.
So.
And you had a little ramp up before coming to Hollywood prior to that in Toronto, but it was like there were a series of things that happened in Canada before you came to LA, right? Like you did a little theater and you did a little television, National Film Board.
Yeah. So
apparently you worked at the
like
CBC
I was saying, I was
point.
really self-motivated. So I was taking classes, doing some Uta Hagen, Respect for Acting. I really enjoyed the Shakespeare in high school, so I got involved with a Jewish community center that had a drama program run by the remarkable Rose Dubin, and I ended up playing Mercutio in a production of Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
One of the other actors had an agent. They asked if I had any representation. I said no. And so that's really where the professional thing started. They were my first job as a paid actor was a local television show called Hanging In.
Hanging In, yeah.
And I think I had one line, "Where's the bathroom?" or something like that. Got introduced to the wardrobe racks. Like, okay, here are your choices. Find your wardrobe, and that was a cool thing.
Yeah.
It was I think it was 3 camera.
Yeah.
And so getting into the professional of it. I was ended up doing some improv work at Second City.
Right, because Second City is based in Toronto. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So I did
all those guys.
Some of that. I did a year at a performing arts high school. Then they didn't let me back for the second year, and that's when I went and played hockey at De La Salle. And that's where I did my first high school play. Was at Dell. Got to play John Proctor in the Crucible.
Wow.
It was cool. Opening night, seeing the fellas from the team in the front rows coming out and playing John Proctor, because it is my name, because I cannot have another.
And all your hockey team was there?
Yeah. It was really cool. Because there was I guess, and then I'm 17.
Right.
And I'd been doing commercials. I'd done a cornflakes commercial, did a Coca-Cola commercial. And that's, and then knowing that, that's where I learned, like, okay, don't have an audition before 11 a.m. because I'm just not going to get it. I'm not a morning guy. Anyway. Yeah. And, don't send me on an audition for a commercial for something, like, if I didn't like the product, I wouldn't go on the audition.
Right. Fantastic. I love it. So, there was a guy called Erwin Stoff.
Yeah, so
Tell me more
Irwin
about
Stoff
Irwin.
was took me on as a manager. He was connected to Paul Aaron's entertainment company in Los Angeles called L's Boy.
Yeah.
It keeps falling.
Yeah, I think we want to tighten this, and
Well, it keeps sinking.
it sinks. Yeah. Does that feel good, everybody? Is that going to drop? Hopefully not. So we're back to he was connected to Paul. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So Irwin Stoff, and then he became sort of.
Yeah, he was my manager.
He was your manager when you
so
came to
I
LA.
was doing stuff in Toronto. Irwin was my manager, and then when I was making the move to Los Angeles, I met with a remarkable agent in person, Hdr Gottlieb at ICM, and she's like, "You seem like a good kid, but you need to have a little more on your resume for me to represent you." And then I got a break with another American production that was filming in Toronto, and I ended up getting one of the co-leads in that, called Young Again. So then that allowed me to, I guess, have enough of a resume so that when I came over, Hdr Gottlieb represented me.
And this was now starting in Canada or already in LA by now? This is in
I
Toronto.
met her, and then I was in Toronto, but then I did some more work in Toronto. I did that show, and then that kind of coincided with, okay, now I have a green card. Now you can come to Los
LA.
Angeles.
Yeah. And you drove across country apparently in a 1969 Volvo.
Yeah, my first car. Yeah,
Fantastic.
British Racing Green. I had bought it from a friend of my mother's, and it was pretty beat up. There were holes in the floor. I think one of the seats was kind of supported by a brick. But yeah, it was
Good times.
4-speed. Yeah, and one of the windshield wipers. It was dangerous. It was a dangerous car, but it was fun.
Sounds that way to me.
But it got me to Los Angeles.
Yeah. And then in '86, River's Edge happens. Now tell me about how that all came together.
Yeah, so that was auditioning.
Yeah.
And
A bit of a break at that time, or is that, or
I
or
think,
sort of-
I really feel like everything is
yeah,
everything's
was
a
a break. Yeah, exactly.
Any opportunity you get, so absolutely, River's Edge was a great role, and what an amazing script. Neil Jimenez and Tim Hunter, and then getting to work with the amazing Crispin Glover. It was really cool to do that audition, and then, to talk about the project with Crispin. He was living in Hollywood, and so then we went up north and we filmed that, and then it was pretty well critically received, and that certainly
It was a big
helped.
a
Well, it
big
helped.
moment.
Hildy was like, okay, now I can do something with you.
And did that jump and lead to the first Bill and Ted in the late '80s, or where there was a lot of stuff in the middle?
Well, another kind of, for me, a pivotal show, just in terms of being of working, was a film called The Night Before.
Mm-hmm.
The director was Tom Eberhardt, and that was like a lead, lots of nights, like carrying a picture. Lori Loughlin, got to work with her, and do some comedy, some drama, and it was a really great experience just to be there every day, do all the hours, acting,
Right.
and just what it took and what it meant to do that.
And then in '91, how did you collide with? Because you've got so many pieces to your life. You've got acting, motorcycling, martial arts, and music, and you were playing in DOGSTAR. Is this starting already in the early '90s, right?
Yeah. So
How did that come together?
I was let's see. So I was I stayed with my stepfather. Then I did that Adult Children's of Alcoholics, I think it was called, the working title. Then I met the friend, and she had a friend who was looking for a roommate. So then I ended up moving in with her friend as a roommate. And so, but then I did some work, and so then I was going to rent a house, and so I ended up moving into Beechwood Canyon. It was a cool little pad, and this is eventually going to connect to DOGSTAR.
To DOGSTAR.
Which is the name of the band. So,
yeah, no, I'm fascinated.
So then I was also playing hockey in Los Angeles, and then there was this
cool.
guy in the local grocery store at the bottom of the hill, and he was wearing I think it was a Detroit Red Wings shirt or something. And I was like, "Do you play hockey?" He's like, "Yeah, you play hockey." And then it was like, "Let's do a pickup game or whatever." But anyway, he turned out to be a musician as well as an actor, and so we started a friendship, and then eventually. He had a friend, Greg Miller, and then we started to jam at my house, and eventually once you start writing songs, you go, well, then we should play live, and so began the DOGSTAR
The
journey.
DOGSTAR era, yeah. Yeah, so you played for a while doing that. It was like, but you were doing it concurrent to everything else, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So
it
if
wasn't
we're
like a
doing
breakaway.
Yeah, I mean, we were a bar band, but we wanted to, have some life experiences. So we did a tour of the States. We ended up touring the States 4 times. We went to Japan 5 times.
Oh wow.
Went to Europe once. But yeah, so sometimes I would do a film, and then I'd come back, and then we'd go on tour. I think even when I was doing The Matrix, they came to Australia, and we did a couple of shows with Bon Jovi. We were the first act of 3, so we played in the daytime.
Wow.
And then to a few folks, they were really sweet people. They were nice to us, and that was fun. Yeah, so, working, playing in a band.
And you did at that time during the time that you were doing Matrix, did your fascination with martial arts and doing what you would ultimately become huge at, had that started before, or when?
Yeah,
how did martial arts enter your life?
I have no martial arts background. Mm-hmm. I think I had one Aikido class or something. So I only know movie kung fu. So yeah, Matrix. Really, action. The first action was with Catherine Bigelow on Point Break.
Point Break, yeah.
So that's the first time I got to do, quote unquote, an action movie.
Right.
And go through the training and work with LAPD SWAT, start working with the weapon manipulations, and fake fights, which were a lot of fun. And then it was speed. And so with the Wachowskis on The Matrix, that was like, okay, so I love the project, love you. And then they were like, oh, and by the way, you have to train for 4 months. And I was like, cool, let's do that.
Right.
And so that's where I met Yuen Wu Ping, who's a famous director and action choreographer director out of Hong Kong. And that
stayed with you, right, through all the other stuff, through your own project, Man of Tai Chi, through John Wick, or not?
Wu Ping worked with me graciously for Man of Tai Chi. And it was cool having done 3 films with him and watched how he had directed. So just, where do you put the camera in a fight scene, and how do you get different stories? But then working with the Wachowskis, storytelling and action, connecting that really together. Character, like what's your character's journey in this? What else? So going into John. So so the just the practical, like, okay, you're going to train for a film in terms of weapons or the fighting styles or fighting. The tree is basically Point Break, Speed, Matrix.
Right, Matrix, yeah.
John Wick.
Yeah. Yeah, but then the ability to pivot and go back now and do a comedy like Bill and Ted's again, and also mix it up throughout your career, like doing Devil's Advocate was not an action film per se, right? And all
Perfect
that.
movie. I love that
Yeah.
film. Taylor Hackford, Al Pacino.
The best, right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, getting that phone call, I think I was in Vancouver. Al Pacino's going to play the man. I was like, wow. So that was pretty extraordinary to get to meet that wonderful artist.
Yeah. Remarkable, wonderful film. And then you've got this stretch that happens in the 2000s where we got to meet a little bit more during Private Lives of Pippa Lee, Henry's Crime Generation. You did Scanner Darkly with Richard, and during that period, you were sort of throttling forward with. Was that under like sort of the company films umbrella, or was it more with L'Amour's company, or how did all of that come together? Because you were starting to veer into wanting to be in control of projects, right, or producing.
Yeah. I mean, I've always been interested in different genres and wanted to, like, to your point earlier of just doing different kinds of films. And a part of that was I had a friend, Stephen Hamill, who was getting into producing, really creative producing, developing stories and scripts. And so we started a company together called Company Films. And one of the first projects the first project that we actually got made was Henry's Crime. And that was, working with James Caan, Vera Farmiga.
I love that movie. We worked on that together.
Malcolm Venville and Peter Stormare, Danny Hawk. So there was the production company, and then I guess to get to how you and I met, being quote unquote a producer on Henry's Crime, I wanted to know a little bit more about what happened in filmmaking outside of the set. So I had a 20 some odd years in of like being in front of the camera, grip, electric, the kind of the shape of what a film set looks like when all the trucks and how it all integrates. But I didn't know post, and so I wanted to kind of learn about that, and that's why I asked to do the tour of Technicolor New York City.
Yes.
Because I wanted to know what the heck is going on here.
Yeah, exactly.
And
what happens with all the silver recovery?
Well, I remember you opening that door, and there was that big bucket, of silver, and I was like, what? Yeah. What's going on here? It's like elves. We're going to go through this process, and then there's going to be magic. And then there's all this silver.
Exactly. And all these cinematographers who knew what was happening, and you didn't get a chance to see what they were doing until the next day, until film was gone.
Yes. Yeah. So what happened during Henry's Crime was, I guess it's like 2009. Going through that post experience and also learning about editorial, the mix, the music, I was working with the post supervisor on Henry's Crime was Chris Keneally. And so when we were doing the color, and that's where the title Side by Side came from. And we're talking about the documentary that Chris and I ultimately put together with Justin Slaza.
We all worked together. Yeah.
So, there was the photochemical colorist, and then there was the digital colorist, and we shot on film. And the two of them speaking to each other in different, color spaces. Give me a point, half a point, CYMK, RGB. And then looking at literally the screen and seeing it split in half while they're kind of the dog's chasing the tail, and it's like
digital capture and film side by side.
Yeah,
literally.
Yes, and working on the color and trying to adjust the look of the film. The DP Paul Cameron, and while I was going through that process, Paul coming in with a camera. a DSLR and like going, look at this image I shot for a commercial. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, I said, you shot it with that and that's going to be in the commercial. He's like, yeah. And I was just like, what the heck is going on here? And then conversations with you, that's what my in was with what turned out to be the last, not the last, but in the storytelling process of film, the camera was the last piece, the digital camera. And then, going through this, anyway, so to keep it with you, Charlie.
No, keep it.
No. So
yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
And that's when I was speaking with Chris Keneally one night after working on the color, and I was like, you want to make a documentary? And he's like, about what? I go, it's the end of the film. It's a wrap. And he's like, what? I'm like, it's just, the guy just walked in with a camera, because I wasn't really aware. Like, I remember when Star Wars was coming out and, the stories of Lucas filming on the Sony early video camera. And, and then it was a big deal when he was doing digital projection and all of that. But I didn't know the story of that digital editing. And, I'd seen THX, like, right? So digital sound. And so I was kind of aware of that, but I didn't know what I came to learn and about what was happening. And so we started to do this document. We had this idea of the documentary, and I think Chris went to you and I went to you and I was like, what are we doing? And I think you were one of our first interviews.
Yes.
And then also you said, if you want to really know what's going on here, and if you want, go to Poland.
Yeah.
And go to a film festival called Camera Image or Camera Image, or go to Poland.
That was it.
And we were like, go to Poland. And we went to Poland.
That's right.
Bum rushed cinematographers. And it was cool because I had worked with a couple of them there, like Turturro and Michael Ballhaus.
Yeah.
And it was actually also there, and you helped connect us to that.
To the event.
To Kajik and
Marek.
And they really helped us out. But that's where we started also get our reputation, because we had met so many people that when we started to say, like, couldn't we interview you? They were like, oh, you're a part of that?
That's how the buzz began, right?
I don't know if it was quite buzz, but then while we were making the document, it's so funny because every time because then we got into the what is going on here, and that's that's where the whole of what are we losing, what are we gaining by this digital, and what are we leaving with the photochemical?
The transition, what was happening creatively, right?
Yeah,
in a sense, right?
It was work process. It was it has creative implications into the process, but the cinematographers we're losing the blacks, the contrast, in the whole early days of that. And you can speak,
of course,
really in depth about that. But the passion for it. And then while we were making the documentary, Panavision stopped making film cameras and Aeroflex stopped making film cameras.
Right. The inventory stopped be increasing. They were still there, but they stopped making new ones. Exactly.
They stopped making film cameras.
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah.
They were like, it's a wrap. It's over.
Thankfully, there's still people shooting film again. But
yeah. I mean, but anyway, it was like holding on. And so for me, it was a really, to speak to all the filmmakers that I had a chance to sit down with and go through that process. Thank you for that.
Yes.
Because you were very instrumental in a lot of what we had a chance to do and the directions to go into. And I think what's interesting too is I don't know if there's a direct correlation, but after that, it was literally 2 years.
Yeah, it was.
Where it was from like 98% film to 98% digital.
Yeah, it was just a
2 years?
Oh, yeah, waterfall. Exactly. 2 years. Yeah.
But then right after that, there was a huge shakeup in post.
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Post film finishing, post color, post and sound.
Yeah.
All of that post world went through
A series of transitions. And it's going through it again now with the demand for 4K broadcast and for sound with Atmos, not just Atmos for theaters, Atmos for home Atmos. So I mean, there's the, as I like to say, the business in a sense needs to follow the manufacturers. And then the manufacturers feed the consumers, and then the consumers then ultimately drive what will be the new standard. So when the consumer,
That's not true.
Well, the consumers, the 4K, not that they're driving it, but that that the manufacturers would wish. How's this? They would wish to be able to do that. That's what I mean. With
Right.
what's happened with Netflix and Amazon, what's happened with 4K
Delivery,
4K delivery,
up-resing.
even though it's not everywhere, it's like
No,
the
it's in the
idea is
contract.
they're tracking use by consumers. They're trying
Everyone
to.
wants to sell a new whistle.
That's what I'm saying. They want to sell TV sets.
Yeah.
That's my point. That's my only point. I'm not trying to say.
But I mean,
yeah.
but it's not like, I mean, the Blu-ray system, right? It's not even the best, most efficient spectrum to be putting images on a DVD, right? There's a whole other spectrum that, what was it? It was like, it shouldn't be Blu-ray, it should be yellow ray. What am I talking about? I don't know the specifics of that.
Right?
But
No. There's there are limitations to each of these things. Yeah, absolutely. And then now there's
transitions.
now there's the of course the HDR Color Space, which inhabits
Yeah.
all resolutions. By the way, it's not a
Right.
matter of that's independent of 4K and HD. It's a color space that gives you more of the steps between what is paper-based white and maximum black and middle gray. So you get all the steps of detail in between. You see all the shadow and highlight detail. And as a result, it makes the home experience in HDR different than it was with the narrower version of that detail. So
Right.
so that's transitioning too. But really what's happening when you think about it is, and this is where we kind of come and we swing full circle, is wait a second. Going to movies is a social experience. Let's not forget. We go to theaters. We don't just sit at home. We don't just embellish the idea that we can make a home theater. We do want to embrace the idea that even though there may be the thing of day and date, there may be the possibility, even perhaps the demand or the mandate of that. These are some of the discussions that have sort of I've been compelled to want to get into because I wonder how the cycles are going to turn. Because I didn't really get. I don't want to take over a bandstand with you sitting in the seat across from me.
I'm more interested in speaking about this than my biography.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm fascinated by the idea. Like when I talked in one of my or the first show that I did about the idea that we went from the theatrical era to the theatrical era with a home video window to a brief loss of the independent film sort of marketplace when there was a desire to only make large blockbusters for theatrical, and then streaming came in and sort of filled that independent middle range budget gap that allowed more content to get made. And then in a sense, with that, we ran into this idea that it was cool to not have a mystique for theatrical and to say, okay, well, we'll put them both out at once. And now all of a sudden, I wonder in this debate, what's next? Are the streaming guys going to buy theaters? I don't know, but something's got to become social, I hope, again.
Yeah, so going through this film digitization and all of the elements that you're speaking about made the image transportable in a different way. So the new piece that we're seeing in terms of, and which speaks to your, social collective experience of a film, is digital streaming, right? So that new technology and the way that we're going to be able to stream anything everywhere. And so that digitized image capture to now digitized image exhibition, you're getting Netflix, you're getting everybody now is going. It's a whole new world, which is great, of story creation. Everyone, there's a big
and the studios, Warner Media under AT&T,
Hulu, Quibi,
Disney,
which is going to be pure mobile. So now things are going to be dedicated, made for your portable communication interactive device. And so where's the social? So groups of people, you got things to do. You got to go do some things sometimes. So go to the movies.
That's it. Exactly right. And that cuts to the idea of the large film, the John Wick 3, and you're
if we're going to talk big films, then we need to talk about Avengers Endgame.
Okay, Avengers Endgame. Okay.
And, James Cameron's out there, making Avatar for $1 billion.
Right. Yeah.
I love Cameron. That's awesome.
There you go.
And talk about being in a digitized space. But anyway.
Yeah, exactly. But
so your point is like what? So now there's the big movies, the big film experience. Yeah, but
the smaller theatrical experience. Let's take. We could even go into the list of things. A film that I love personally. Your film, Henry's Crime. I adore that film. That film was finished before the world was completely taken over by streaming.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
I remember sitting in the theater with you and everyone, having they have the puzzle moment of how this is going to get to the public. Is it going to be a small theatrical release and a large sort of bit of a marquee value home video release, because that still existed.
Yeah.
And then now all of a sudden, I guess I wonder, like, is the streaming era, because of its ability to in a sense, through the volume of what it is and the subscription model that it is, does it ultimately allow for a global financing in the end of not just home viewing, but maybe there's a swing back at some point, and there's ability for these this volume of content that's getting made to have a social context of some kind besides just people staring at their iPhones or their devices. Or is that the new social? It's like it all becomes, right? Am I making any sense? Or am I sounding crazy, Keanu?
No, I remember when I was talking to the Wachowskis for Side by Side, and I was pitching that, the special experience, the social of going to the theater and the collective and being together and laughing together and crying together and hearing each other. And at the time, Andy, now Lily Wachowski, was like, and sweating together. And stinky, and it was like, and they were proposing that the new construct was to be visiting each other socially, but in a offline experience. So we'd be talking to each other, but not necessarily in the same room, but we're communicating, right, through our devices or through.
And there's also, I guess, on some level, when we think about it, because there's a volume of viewers for specific things that stream, there's the water cooler dialogue, right? There's the people gathering after they've been to something and talking about how great it is. So there is
Game of Thrones,
the perfect example, right? Exactly. Yeah.
You must go home and see that.
Yeah, it's because it becomes required reading, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to watch it to be in the conversation. Isn't that the idea?
And then and also it's not so cheap to go to a movie.
That's right. There you go.
So there's that as well.
Big deal, right? Because subscriptions are like Netflix, $10 a month, and you get to watch all this unlimited content, including movies.
I'm going to go to the movies for $15 and get some popcorn and a Coca-Cola. I'm at $50. What the heck's going on? Parking and then.
Yeah, your night becomes awfully expensive.
If you got kids, you want to go see that Toy Story movie.
Yeah, baby.
It's $100.
Yeah,
it's $150.
Yeah, rather than putting it up on your flat screen at home for the family in the home theater.
And bring your friends over.
Exactly.
But you still need things to do sometimes.
You do.
And Let's go to the movies.
Let's go to the movies. Exactly right.
Right.
Exactly right. Apropos of other things in life, I'm absolutely transfixed with...
Wait.
Yeah.
So what?
Let's keep going. Keep going.
Riff
Keep
me,
going.
Riff to me about Red.
Okay. Well, was founded by the guy who created the Oakley sunglasses. I mean, it's it's a
Because you saw that early days.
I saw the early days, and there was a lot of
Because
complexity.
that was going to be a disruptive.
It was a disruptor. It was a disruptor because we dealt with firmware changes and color space management changes in the early era of the Red One, and also light sensitivity issues, and shooting with the Red was not what it would become. So there was the old guard that were the Airy folks, and they felt that there was a certain desire to kind of hold on to the people that were behind the optics and the science of the camera, that understood a visual capture, picture capture from a photographic standpoint that honored film, and I feel that Airy held that, in albeit somewhat of a more conservative company, and Red came in kind of balls out and just created this super high resolution capture capacity, and then started to ultimately introduce the idea of greater light sensitivity, even though the other competing cameras were ahead of that. But the digital capture world then sort of exploded, and then once again we go back to the manufacturers driving consumption. Go to Best Buy, buy a 4K TV for $250. Everybody's going to watch in 4K. So it's like all of a sudden the world changes, and I think for the cinematographers who want to see controls in each step of the game, they want to see it for the consumer. They want to see it for each other as a community. Red was definitely a disruptor. Yeah, yeah.
And what was the thing because I remember there was, when I was in it around 2012, 14, there's this idea of standardizing the color space.
Yes, that's ACES and the Academy standard.
Did that happen?
That's happened. Yes,
it happened.
Well, it has happened to the extent that EXR is a file format that was embraced by the Academy of Arts and Sciences and film and television.
And so how does Red? Because I know they had a proprietarial kind of color.
Well, everybody.
But then does it all fold into that?
Everything
Is that the intersection?
Well,
is that the marketplace, the exchange of defining the weights and measures of color?
Well, no. I would go another direction from that. I'd say that in the camera world, you're working with RAW, and the hope is that RAW is full dynamic range for all cameras. EXR as a file format and ACES as a color standard was the idea really more of a post-production idea to create a standard, just like there would be audio standards that we have in Dolby audio and stereo audio. So it gives you, but I think that the real concept was, from the Academy, from my standpoint, was like, hey, we're losing film. That was pretty bread and butter. We had a Foot-Lambert brightness standard, and then we have exposure standards for the negative itself, and you get what's on there, So the idea behind this open-ended possibility, they wanted to, provide some guidance for luminance and color spectrum and contrast. And to give the audience the experience that cinematographers would want, to give everything that they can capture in the image, and not, for lack of a better word, dumb it down, but leave it open in capture, and then provide presentation standards so that theater to theater, you could pretty much say, yeah, we're good. We can show this in the digital cinema standard. We can color correct following these bit rate standards, right? Because it used to be, what was it, 10-bit was the old DPX standard, and then that went up for EXR, you know? So that's the whole idea, was like that they were improving, but also respecting the art, I think, is the idea, and having the color scientists like Josh Pines and Joachim Zalady film and all these guys kind of come together to talk about that and to become guides for what would ultimately be otherwise the Wild West, right?
And so that happened.
That's happening and continues. It continues to happen. Yeah, because it's an ongoing dialogue, open, because the standards are going to. It's not that they're going to constantly change, but as technology changes and it expands, right? So the idea is that it's that there is a group that monitors what is happening in the world for presentation. It's sort of like the DCI standard, or digital cinema, or Dolby Vision, or HDR Color Space for monitors. It's like these things were all put together. I mean, certainly HDR was created from my standpoint for aesthetic value. I mean, it gives you something that you don't otherwise get in what is a much narrower range, more plastic-looking image on an HD flat screen, when you don't get all of that shadow and highlight detail, the opened up. Yeah.
And so where do you...
Now I'm getting interviewed. I love this.
Where do you see... what... From what do you see coming down the road? So if the 4K standard, what's next?
Well,
after
I mean,
that,
the problem is that resolutions get crazy, right? So we talk about when it's the same thing when we're talking about theatrical standard, theatrical delivery, and home delivery, and manufacturers making something, right? So a 4K TV is a manufactured product. Resolutions become new standards, and it's an increase in technological capability. The idea of high-resolution files was not necessarily in the imagination of those that were producing before they came to be.
Right.
I mean, they imagined that it would be possible, but I remember in the early days of 4K, I mean, I'm sure you were in enough sessions to watch things process slowly through the computer processing power, right?
Sure.
And watching things stutter, right?
Oh, my God.
And then it went to real time.
Yeah.
And real-time rendering, real-time playback from a color decision that was made.
Yeah.
I'm sure if you were sitting in on any of the DIs of the big films that you've done or watched any of the color, you'd see the stuff rocketing through at one time that was not possible.
Yeah.
Right? So
that's the delivery pipeline.
Right.
So all of that, all of those bits, all of those ones and zeros have to fit into these pipes to get to your house. I mean, like, isn't that going to be a huge other data load? Like, with the resolution comes ones and zeros, right?
With streaming, you're not downloading.
Right, but it still has to get there.
It still has to get there, yeah. And I think that the big issue now is, and I work with a cloud company that is trying to do sort of, and as we know with Netflix, right? Netflix distribution hub is in the Amazon cloud. I mean, that's how we get what we get from them. It's a completely web-based, cloud-based system, right?
Right.
So when you think about it, what do we hunger for in our world? And I would say would be bandwidth being available everywhere, right? Is bandwidth available everywhere? No, not everywhere equivalently, and even block to block in cities. What's provided, I mean, we have people who are getting 1,000 megabits per second up and down in their homes or in their buildings and facilities, but we still have low bandwidth in a lot of places where you're not getting the bandwidth speed to deliver a real-time playback, certainly of a 4K image, right? And so there's and they've got to come up with clever ways to make that work, which I think
the cheats,
there are cheats
algorithmic
with the technology itself. But you're absolutely right. I mean, we're where we.
So is that AT&T? I mean, so then all of
Well,
these
it's all the players. You have AT&T, you have Verizon,
Comcast,
you have a
but they're competing with
Spectrum in the
each other as well, right?
in all kinds of ways. I mean, AT&T owns Warner Brothers. Comcast, I believe, still owns NBC and Universal, right?
Yeah.
So you have, then the business becomes. It was funny when I was talking with Mike Tadros the other day about the last Warner Brothers picture. He says, and I refer to it as Warner Brothers Pictures. He says, "Oh no, Charlie, it's not Warner Brothers Pictures, it's Warner Media now." And I'm like, okay. He says, yeah. It's not. It's AT&T. It's like it's not just a studio, right? So there are the parents. I mean, if we look at top of that food chain, I guess, right? Because they are.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
That's what it is, right?
They're the kitchen. You know, you could bring all these chefs in and make all of these things, but.
Exactly right.
But then they have to get out there.
Exactly. And then as we think about that, we think about home bandwidth, but then when we think about bandwidth outdoors. Just think now, right? I mean, I don't know. I'm sure at home you probably have Verizon Fios or whatever, you know, high megabit, high speed connection. But a company like Spectrum, who are at the Time Warner Group, they offer public hotspots, and there have always been public hotspots. I mean, I can go and sit in Union Square Park in New York and technically find an internet signal different than what I get from my phone provider with greater speeds, let's say. You know, but the idea is to grow a network where we're not just pulling speeds from coax cables into a modem. Ultimately, I think that the idea is to create these networks of mobile speed, right? And that's not happened yet either. So yes, we are in a transition.
Has it happened anywhere? Has it happened in South Korea yet? Is it in Malay?
I wish I had that know-how, and that I'm not as hip to. But that to me,
so it's not a web anymore. It's an environment.
It's an environment, and but it's a global challenge, because I remember I was working on a film with Lasse Hallström, and Lasse was going to go home to Sweden. I think it was Nutcracker early on, and we were putting together some cloud thing for him, and it didn't pan out. But I remember the issue was he was going to go to his country home somewhere in Sweden for like a period of time in the summer where there was no bandwidth.
Right.
And it's like all of a sudden it's like,
I have to fix this.
Yeah. But it's like you realize that the world has not become equivalent in that sense, in any sense, in terms of what that is and how that channels. And then there are also border issues, even border issues, and for that matter, with the way that content travels between parts of the world. As you know, man from Tai Chi in China, you work with CFG, they have blocking and standards and certain controls that prevent East and West from having a handshake, right? So it's like then there's all of that too. But at the end of the day, it is a global network, and the one thing that I think we all tip our hats to in a sense with what Netflix is doing is they're going to create local content, which is great, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're like now. I mean, I grew up in Brussels, Belgium, as a kid, and we watched American TV either with subtitles in Flemish or dubbed in French, and now all of a sudden there's going to be an arm of these giants making local content for the people who live in that country, no matter how small. That's awesome, right? So that becomes the new world for creative content that we didn't have before.
Yeah.
So all of the things that I bang my fist against the table about the social experience of the movie theater, because I'm an old-fashioned movie theater kind of guy, actually the world does open up in a way in the streaming world, and we do get a social experience, and we do get an international and a global experience that we, I think, to a great extent, had always longed for, but didn't have a way to make happen, right? I'm interested in what happened with, well, I don't know if you want to talk
Wait a second.
about. Yeah.
What about VR, AR?
Well, VR and AR are technologies that, I mean, how do you feel about VR? For me, what VR is about to me, it's about being able to show something to someone in as an experience. So if I wanted to sell my home, if I owned a home in the south of France, and I have a friend that's got a lot of dough that lives in the U.S. that wants to see it and doesn't want to fly over to look at it beforehand, I would give him a VR tour of the inside of the home. That to
Right.
me makes tremendous sense. VR is entertainment. I haven't wrapped my head around it yet. I know it's there. I know it's happening. What
And
do you
so
feel
with,
about it?
But with the VR, have you spoken to anybody with the VR cameras, or how's the technology? What's the word on the street on the technology for image acquisition?
It's working. I mean, you have all of the multiple positions, and you have the 360-degree experience, and you get to give the person the environmental experience that it's supposed to give you with the goggles. I mean, I think it works. I mean, but
Is there a different post path for VR at all, or is it using legacy pipelines?
I have not done any VR posts, my man, so I don't know, but I would guess.
But you're talking to the cats who do.
Yeah, there is a pipeline to color correct and work with the image that I think works with common file formats and pipelines, but I'm not quite as familiar with that. I know that our mutual friend Tim Stippen, who's still a colorist today, has recently been color correcting stuff for 3D versions of things that will be released in 2D. That clearly involves using the glasses and all of that. So but it's still common file formats.
Right. So
because there was a 2D version.
Right. So they have that.
Right.
I'm wondering what that's going to be. So there is a whole new frontier of storytelling and experiencing a story that's beyond let's go to the movies. And now maybe that communal experience in the VR space will be isolated but together.
True.
We can all look at that home.
True.
And we could all have our avatars, or we could be in that space. We could meet in that space.
Well, I would then jump from there to games like my son, who's now 21, but at the time would be playing that are out now, like Red Dead Redemption, which have release dates like movies.
Right.
And these games, even here where we are at Formosa Group, I mean, I think they work on game sound. It's become part of the entertainment business. And it is a social experience because I believe, although I've not been in that gaming world, people have a certain amount of dialing collaboration in groups and people, and I think that they kill each other, right, in some of these things, right? They shoot at each other, I believe. I have not played them, so I don't know. But but that's the idea is that there is a world where that is a multi-home entertainment thing and a group thing where people play together, right? Yeah. Which is then they'll do the whatever they'll do.
But I think the quest, you were saying, what drives the marketplace, or what drives the consumer? You were doing your kind of your web or ecology model of the consumer, of the manufacturers. But then there's also the desire of the eyeball. Like the eyeball is having a really good run right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? In terms of it wants to see things. It's the way in is being kind of that wanting to have that VR experience, right? There was that moment where 3D, they tried to push 3D onto people.
And there were issues
and the
with
consumer were just like, eh.
And there were issues with it because people were getting sick. For watching. No, I mean, it was for real, though. Like actually getting stomach illness. Yeah. From the viewing experience. Yeah. I never got into it. So I just, but I know that there were,
And so the technology, the VR, it's going to, I think it's, I don't think anybody knows what's going to happen.
Well, if you look at what the experience is like going into any of your series on the John Wick film, I mean, that experience is very dimensional and action-y, right? So, I can see that connecting to that world. Yeah.
Oh, go VR, VR Wick.
Yeah, VR Wick. Come on, man. We'll be the goggles. We'll be able.
I think the game is already doing that, right?
It's
They
already
have
doing
a game where you put the goggles on and you can go through a.
Yeah, and then we're like looking
Hex.
through your eyes.
Right.
I am Keanu. I have a gun in my hand, and I am
First
John.
person.
I am John Wick. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Interesting. Could happen. Yeah, I mean, all these things are happening. I mean, so you're saying there is a game for John.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So they have that. Yeah. So that whole world is in a sense. I mean, many people are talking about games as the new box office, right? So there's because there's, but they're not together because they can't be together, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and also there's like the VR aspect of therapy, right? Being able to go through a psychological therapeutic process.
Yes.
In the way that
Absolutely.
works.
That's an application for VR. And another application for VR, from what I understand, is in the hospitals.
Yeah.
They use it for surgery.
Oh, really?
Yes. In education. I believe. This is what I've been told. I mean, I've not gone to
Right.
medical school. Yeah.
No, I am a patient.
but I am a patient.
But I'm a patient.
I can't wait, though, till someone
all
puts the VR
patients.
goggles on.
Put them on. Hurry up.
Hurry up.
Get me out of here. I'm gonna go visit that guy's house.
And
Can I stay
also,
at that house?
well, also in your like you own
Wait,
art.
it's first. I can't. There's nothing there. Wait, there's an apple on the table now, but I can't talk about an empty calorie.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not getting anything.
Right.
Wait a second.
Wait,
I can't touch it. I can't smell it. I
but
can't
it looks
feel it.
real, but eyeballs just like yummy.
Arch motorcycles.
Arch motorcycles.
Come on, man. Get me on the road. You ride like frequently, clearly, right? And
Yeah,
you're-
it's my mode of transportation.
Yeah.
Living in Los Angeles.
But you also ride recreationally and spiritually and all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love motorcycles. Love riding.
And it's what you use on a day-to-day basis to get around, but you also it's sort of like been a portion of your sort of your life to kind of get away from the world for a bit as well, right?
Yeah, once in a while. I mean, it's a good place to think or not think and to feel and reflect. Pay attention to the road. And so there's certainly that quality to it. Yeah, I mean, starting with Arch Motorcycle, it's another version of creating something, right?
Right.
It's another kind of story.
Right.
And then making it, yeah.
And you decided to do it to design a motorcycle that would be different than what's out in the marketplace, right?
Yeah. So the distinction for an Arch motorcycle is, we call it a performance cruiser. So it's the components that are on it, the way that we manufacture the bike, the balance of the motorcycle. Traditionally, long wheelbase motorcycles don't handle that well. Ours does.
Right.
And it's a bespoke production motorcycle. So I think of it as like, it's a production motorcycle, which means it has all the reliability of a manufacturer and all of that. But, we customize it to each client. So, it fits you like a suit, and no one will have your motorcycle.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So you can pick the colors and we fit it to you, all of the hand and foot controls, the custom seat. So it's...
Oh, so you really customize the design for the body of the person who's going to get on it.
Yeah.
And, wow.
And how they want to ride.
Okay, I got it. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. And you make them here, and you're starting to make them in Europe as well, or what? Yeah.
We manufacture them in Hawthorne, California, and we have a distributor in Switzerland, and we have a distributor relationship in England right now.
Cool.
But we have owners in Russia, Malaysia, the States, Australia. Yeah.
Wow. And tell me about this thing that I was, my eyes popped out of my head when I saw it. Keanu Khan. In Scotland, I think, right?
Yeah. It got some. I don't know how they did, but it was a couple of people got together and watched some Reeves movies.
And it became like like a
I think
festival dedicated to you.
I don't. I think a festival. I think let's not get
And we'll
carried
call-
away.
It would be a series of screenings in a
I
city
think
in
a couple of
Scotland.
people got together and then posted that they were doing this, and then I think
In Glasgow.
that became something for people for some reason to talk about.
That's so cool, though.
But there's some good movies in there.
Yeah. They apparently were going to hold it around your birthday in September. Then they pushed it to April, and they've
Oh,
had
did they?
one. They've had one apparently in
Okay.
Glasgow. Yeah.
Well, thanks. Hope you enjoy them.
And you're about to go off and do Bill and Ted's in
New Orleans. Yeah.
Tell me
Another tax
more.
credit situation. I'm like, why can't we? Anyway, show business.
Yeah,
Show business.
that's why we're shooting in New Orleans.
Yeah, there's a great script, and we've been trying to get it made for over 7 years now. And it looks like it's going to happen. Knock on wood, fingers crossed. And yeah.
Yeah. So, how much break time do you like to give yourself at this point? You seem to be constantly working.
Yeah, I'm pretty good at work. I'm not so good at life, but yeah, I try to. I've got more experience with it now, so I kind of know a little bit more of trying to take a break and kind of recharge and
Take time off.
I haven't done it in the past, but I'm talking about it, so it's the first step. I haven't actually done it, but
You haven't taken a break. No.
not really. Working on working.
Working on working.
When I'm not working, I'm working on working.
I love it. Well, at least I guess on this one you don't have to go into martial arts training. There's no, there are no crazy.
I love doing
scenes like-
martial arts
yeah,
training.
which-
Movie martial arts
movie
training.
martial arts training. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but this one's got a lot of, we meet a bunch of our future us's, so there's a lot of appliance makeups and stuff, so it's going to be physical in that way.
It'll be physical in that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's going to sort of revisit these same characters at now.
Yeah, 30 years later.
30 years later, exactly.
Yeah. It's going to be weird. Hopefully it's funny.
How could I mean? It just sounds fantastic.
I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see. I don't know. Hopefully.
Well, I think we definitely we ran around the technology world and the film world and the
Yeah.
acting world and the music world and motorcycles and all kinds of stuff, and lovely. So
Thank you, Charlie.
I cannot thank you enough.
Sure, not at all.
This was really wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much.